The heroic rescue. Captain Liam Hayes stared at the blinking red light on his control panel. A distress signal. Someone was in trouble. He tightened his grip on the steering controls and took a deep breath. All right, let's see who needs saving today. He activated his ship's scanners, and the screen showed a small vessel drifting near a massive asteroid field. Its engines were dead, and sparks flew from its damaged hull. But what worried Liam more were the pirate ships circling it like vultures. "They're closing in," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. Without a second thought, he pushed his thrusters to maximum speed and raced toward the stranded ship. As he approached, his communication system crackled to life. A soft, panicked voice spoke. "This is Princess Alara of the Lorian Empire. My ship is under attack. Please, help me." A princess. Liam didn't have time to process the information. A blast of laser fire shot past his cockpit, shaking his ship violently. The pirates had noticed him. "Hang on, princess. I'm coming," he said, determination filling his voice. He dodged another blast and fired back, his ship's lasers lighting up the dark space around him. Two pirate ships turned to face him, breaking off their attack on Ilara's vessel. Liam's hands moved quickly, his fingers dancing over the controls as he weaved between enemy fire. He managed to take down one pirate ship with a direct hit to its engines, watching as it exploded in a bright flash of light. But there was no time to celebrate. The second pirate was on his tail, firing relentlessly. Liam's ship shook with every hit. Warning lights flashed across his control panel. He gritted his teeth. "Come on, hold together." He made a sharp turn, looping behind the pirate ship. He fired 3 quick shots, and the pirate's engine burst into flames. The ship spun out of control before crashing into an asteroid, disappearing in a fiery explosion. Liam's eyes locked onto the princess's ship. It was still floating helplessly, sparks flying from its hull. He carefully maneuvered his ship closer and activated his docking system. With a loud clang, his ship connected to hers. He grabbed his helmet and hurried to the airlock, his heart pounding. As the door opened, he was met with thick smoke and flashing emergency lights. He pushed forward, moving through the narrow corridors until he found the cockpit. There, slumped over the control panel, was Princess Alara. Her silver hair sparkled even in the dim emergency lights, and her delicate features showed signs of exhaustion and fear. Her royal robes were torn, and her arm was bleeding. "Princess Alara," Liam called out, kneeling beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing bright, glowing blue irises. She looked at him, her face a mix of relief and confusion. You answered my call," she whispered, her voice weak. "I thought I was going to die out here." Liam smiled gently. "Not today, princess." He carefully helped her stand, supporting her weight as she leaned on him. "We need to get out of here before more pirates arrive." They made their way back to his ship, Alara stumbling with every step. As they crossed the airlock, an alarm blared through Liam's ship. He looked at the screen and his stomach dropped. More pirate ships were approaching. 5 of them. They were faster and heavily armed, their weapons already locking onto his vessel. "No, not now," he muttered, quickly strapping Alara into the co-pilot seat. He jumped into his chair and powered up the engines, his fingers flying over the controls. "Hold on tight," he warned, his voice tense. The engines roared to life, and he pulled the ship away from the princess's broken vessel just as the pirate ships opened fire. Explosions lit up the darkness around them, the shockwaves shaking Liam's ship. He dodged left, then right, narrowly escaping the deadly blasts. Alara gripped her seat, her eyes wide with fear. We won't make it," she said, her voice trembling. Liam shot her a confident glance. "Yes, we will." He pushed the engines to their limit, speeding toward the asteroid field. The pirates followed, their lasers firing wildly. Liam weaved between the massive rocks, using them as shields to block the enemy attacks. But just as they were about to break free from the asteroid belt, A loud explosion rocked the ship. The control panel sparked, and the engine sputtered. Warning! Engine failure. Power levels dropping. The computer's robotic voice announced. Liam's heart sank. They were losing power, drifting helplessly toward a massive asteroid. He tried to steer, but the controls were dead. Alara looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with fear. We're going to crash. Liam's mind raced, searching for a solution. But the asteroid was getting closer, its rocky surface growing larger on the screen. They were out of options. He gripped the controls, bracing for impact. Hold on. The screen went white as they plunged toward the asteroid. Escape from danger. The ship hurtled toward the massive asteroid, spinning out of control. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and sparks flew from the control panel. Captain Liam Hayes fought to regain control, his hands gripping the steering controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. Come on! Come on! He shouted, trying to steady the ship, but nothing responded. The engines were dead, and they were falling fast. The asteroid's jagged surface grew larger with every second. Beside him, Princess Alara's face was pale, her glowing blue eyes wide with fear. We're going to crash, she cried, her voice shaking. Liam's mind raced. There had to be a way out. He quickly scanned the control panel, searching for any sign of life. His heart skipped a beat when he saw a small flicker on the auxiliary power gauge. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He flipped the switch, rerouting all remaining power to the stabilizers. The ship jerked violently, and for a moment, it felt like they were going to break apart. But then, slowly, the spinning stopped. Liam pulled up on the controls, fighting against the ship's descent. The engines sputtered, groaning under the strain, but they responded just enough to change their course. The asteroid's rocky surface rushed past, so close that Liam could see the cracks and craters on its jagged face. They skimmed the surface, barely avoiding a deadly impact, and shot out the other side of the asteroid belt. Liam let out a shaky breath, his heart pounding. We made it. We're alive, he whispered, almost not believing it himself. But their relief was short-lived. The control panel lit up with new warnings. Enemy ships approaching, the computer's robotic voice announced. Liam's eyes widened. The pirates were back. 5 heavily armed ships, closing in fast. Their red lights glowed ominously against the darkness of space, weapons ready to fire. They found us, Alara whispered, her voice filled with dread. They won't stop until they capture me. Liam set his jaw, determination burning in his eyes. Not on my watch. He pushed the engines to their limit, but they sputtered, struggling to keep up. The earlier damage had taken its toll. They were moving too slowly, and the pirates were gaining on them. Alara's eyes filled with worry. We won't outrun them like this. They're too fast. Liam glanced at her, then at the damaged control panel. His mind raced, calculating their odds. It didn't look good. But then his eyes fell on a blinking button marked Manual Override. An idea sparked in his mind. It was crazy, reckless, but it was their only chance. Hold on tight, he warned, his fingers hovering over the button. Alara's eyes widened. What are you going to do? Liam didn't answer. He slammed his fist down on the button, and the ship lurched forward with a burst of speed. The engines roared, emitting a high-pitched whine as they overloaded. He steered the ship back toward the asteroid belt. The pirates followed, their lasers lighting up the darkness as they fired. Liam weaved between the asteroids, using them as shields. Explosions erupted around them as the pirates' shots collided with the giant rocks. The ship shuddered, sparks flying from the control panel. The engines were overheating, pushing past their limit. Red warning lights flashed, and the temperature gauge climbed dangerously high. Alara clung to her seat, her face pale. The engines, they're going to explode. I know, Liam grunted, his eyes focused on the asteroids ahead. Just a little farther. Come on. He made a sharp turn, dodging a massive asteroid, then another. The pirates followed, but their speed worked against them. One of the enemy ships clipped an asteroid, spinning out of control before crashing in a fiery explosion. 4 ships left. Liam pushed the engines harder, feeling the heat rise in the cockpit. His hands were slick with sweat, but he didn't let go of the controls. He could hear the metal creaking, threatening to tear apart. "They're gaining on us," Alara shouted, her voice filled with fear. Liam's eyes narrowed. He saw a cluster of smaller asteroids up ahead, moving in a chaotic pattern. It was a death trap, a field of rapidly spinning rocks that could crush them in an instant. But it was also his only chance. "Hold on," he yelled, steering straight for the cluster. Alara's eyes widened in horror. "Are you crazy? We'll be smashed to pieces." "Trust me," Liam said, his voice steady. "It's the only way." He plunged into the chaotic asteroid field, weaving between the spinning rocks with incredible precision. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring as debris scraped against the hull. The pirates hesitated, then followed, but they weren't as skilled or as desperate as Liam. One by one, they were caught in the deadly maze. 2 ships collided, exploding in a bright flash of light. Another was crushed between 2 massive rocks. Only 1 ship made it through, still on their tail. Its weapons charged, ready to fire. Liam's engines screamed in protest, but they kept going. He saw the edge of the asteroid field up ahead. Freedom was just within reach, but the pirate ship was too close, its lasers locking on. He took a deep breath, his hand steady on the controls. Time to end this. He made a sharp turn, flipping the ship upside down. The sudden move caught the pirate off guard, and it fired, missing its target. Liam spun around, now behind the enemy ship. He fired 3 quick shots, his lasers hitting the pirate's engines. The ship exploded, sending debris flying in all directions. Liam exhaled, relief flooding through him. They were safe. For now. He slowed the ship, glancing at Alara. Her face was pale, but her eyes were filled with awe. You saved us," she whispered. Liam smiled. "I promised, didn't I?" But before they could relax, a new warning flashed on the screen. "Power levels critical. Engine failure imminent." The ship's lights flickered, and the engines went silent. They were drifting through space, powerless and vulnerable. Alara's face fell. "We're stranded." Liam's jaw tightened. He wouldn't give up. "Not yet. We'll figure something out. I always do." But as they floated in the vast emptiness of space, surrounded by the debris of battle, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. Through the portal, the ship drifted through the cold, silent void of space. Power was gone. The engines were dead. Captain Liam Hayes stared at the dark control panel, his fingers still gripping the useless steering controls. Princess Alara sat beside him, her glowing blue eyes reflecting the dim emergency lights. She looked at him with worry. "We're stranded, and the pirates will come back for me. They always do." Liam's jaw tightened. He refused to give up. "Not while I'm here," he said firmly. But his mind raced. How could they escape with no power and no weapons? His eyes fell on the strange artifact resting in Alara's lap. It was a smooth silver orb, etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Alara's fingers traced the lines, her touch delicate and gentle. "What is that?" Liam asked, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Alara looked down at the orb, her face softening. "It's called the Starheart. It's a relic of my people, a gift passed down through my royal bloodline. They say it holds ancient power, but I don't know how to use it." Liam's eyes narrowed. "Ancient power, huh?" He leaned closer, studying the glowing symbols. They pulsed softly, almost as if they were alive. "Do you think it could get us out of here?" Alara hesitated, her fingers trembling. "I don't know. It's been dormant for centuries. No one's ever seen it awaken. Liam looked at the darkness outside, then back at the dead control panel. They had no other choice. We're out of options. If this thing has power, we need to try. Alara swallowed, fear flashing across her face. But she nodded, her resolve hardening. All right, I'll try. She closed her eyes, cradling the orb in her hands. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, as she spoke in her ancient language. The symbols began to glow brighter, their light spreading across the orb's surface. Liam's eyes widened as the air around them crackled with energy. He could feel a strange vibration, a hum that resonated deep within his chest. Suddenly, a beam of light shot from the orb, piercing the darkness of space. It twisted and swirled, forming a swirling vortex in front of their ship. The vortex shimmered with colors Liam had never seen before, its edges crackling with energy. What is that? He stammered, his eyes wide with shock. Alara's face was pale, her eyes glowing with the same light as the orb. A portal to another world. Before Liam could react, the ship was pulled forward, sucked into the vortex by an invisible force. The cockpit shook violently, the light blinding them as they were dragged through the swirling tunnel. Liam gripped the controls, his teeth clenched. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the roaring energy around them. They were hurled through the vortex, tumbling through a kaleidoscope of colors and lights. Time and space seemed to twist and bend around them, warping reality itself. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the vortex spat them out. The ship shuddered, the engines sputtering back to life as they emerged into a new world. Liam's eyes widened at the sight before them. They were floating above a vast, alien landscape, unlike anything he had ever seen. The sky was a deep shade of violet, dotted with 3 massive moons that hung low, casting a ghostly glow over the land below. Strange, towering trees with glowing leaves reached up toward the heavens, their branches swaying in an invisible breeze. Rivers of shimmering liquid light flowed between hills covered in luminous flowers that danced with energy. "It's beautiful," Alara whispered, her eyes wide with awe. Liam nodded, his gaze fixed on the surreal scenery. "Where are we?" Alara held the orb tightly, its glow dimming as the portal closed behind them. "This is the lost world, the land of my ancestors, a place no one has seen for thousands of years." Liam's jaw dropped. "Your ancestors came from here." Alara nodded, her expression solemn. "Yes, this is the birthplace of the Star Heart, the source of its power." Before Liam could ask more, a warning beep echoed through the cockpit. He looked at the control panel and his heart sank. "We've got another problem. We're losing altitude. Fast." The ship's engines coughed and sputtered, struggling to keep them in the air. Liam fought with the controls, but it was no use. They were falling. "Brace for impact," he shouted, his voice laced with urgency. The ship plunged toward the alien landscape, crashing through the glowing trees. Branches scraped against the hull as they tumbled down a steep hill, finally skidding to a stop at the edge of a shimmering river. Liam's head spun, his vision blurred. He shook himself, checking Alara. She was shaken but unharmed, her fingers still wrapped around the orb. "That was rough," she gasped, her face pale. Liam let out a breath of relief. "Yeah, but we made it." He unbuckled his harness, his legs shaky as he stood. "We should check the damage." They stepped outside, the alien air cool against their skin. The ground was soft, covered in glowing moss that pulsed with faint light. The river nearby sparkled like liquid silver, its surface shimmering with energy. Alara's eyes widened as she looked around. "This place, it feels alive." Liam nodded, feeling a strange hum in the air. "Yeah, like it's watching us." Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the valley. The ground trembled, and the glowing trees swayed. Alara's face went pale. "We're not alone." Before they could react, shadowy creatures emerged from the trees. Their bodies were sleek and muscular, their eyes glowing a fiery red. They moved with terrifying speed, their claws scraping against the glowing ground. Liam's heart raced. Get back to the ship. They ran, but the creatures were faster. One lunged at Liam, its jaws snapping inches from his face. He dodged, grabbing a metal rod from the wreckage and swinging it with all his strength. The creature yelped, retreating for a moment. Alara raised the Starheart, her eyes glowing as she chanted in her ancient language. A burst of light erupted from the orb, blinding the creatures. They hissed, their bodies flickering before they vanished into the shadows. Liam's chest heaved as he caught his breath. What were those things? Alara's face was grim. Guardians, protectors of this land. They're drawn to the power of the Starheart. Liam looked at the orb, its light dimming once more. We need to find a way off this planet before they come back. Alara nodded, her eyes full of determination. Agreed. But first, we must find the heart of the lost world. It's the only way to control the Starheart and escape this place. Liam tightened his grip on the metal rod, his eyes scanning the dark forest. Then let's get moving, before those things return. They turned toward the glowing valley, ready to face whatever dangers awaited them. Rescue and revelation. The alien forest was alive with movement, shadows dancing between the glowing trees as the eerie hum of the land vibrated through the air. Captain Liam Hayes gripped the metal rod tightly, his eyes scanning the surroundings, every nerve on edge. Beside him, Princess Alara held the Starheart close to her chest, its faint glow casting a silver light on her delicate features. Her glowing blue eyes flickered with fear and determination. We must keep moving. The Guardians are relentless. They won't stop until they reclaim the Starheart. Liam nodded, his jaw set with resolve. Then we find this heart of the lost world. And fast. They navigated through the dense forest, the ground covered in luminous moss that pulsed under their feet. Strange plants with glowing petals reached out as they passed, their leaves whispering secrets in an ancient tongue. Liam shivered, feeling as if invisible eyes were watching their every step. This place gives me the creeps. It's like it's alive. Alara's expression was serious. It is alive. My ancestors called it the living land, connected to the Starheart's power. Every leaf, every stone, every creature here is bound to its energy. Liam looked around, his eyes wide. Great, so we're walking inside a giant, glowing beast. Alara managed a small smile. Something like that. But her smile quickly faded as a low growl echoed through the trees. They froze, their eyes darting toward the sound. A shadow moved, then another. The red eyes of the Guardians glowed between the branches, watching, waiting. They're here, Liam whispered, his grip tightening on the metal rod. Run. They sprinted through the forest, the Guardians chasing them with terrifying speed. The creatures moved like shadows, their bodies flickering as they leaped from tree to tree, their claws scratching against the glowing bark. Liam's heart pounded, his legs burning as he ran. He could hear Alara's breaths beside him, rapid and panicked. But she didn't falter. Even as the ground trembled under the Guardian's weight, she kept running, her eyes locked ahead. Suddenly, the forest opened up into a vast clearing, revealing an ancient temple standing at the edge of a cliff. It was made of silver stone, covered in glowing vines that pulsed with energy. At its center was a massive doorway, its arch lined with the same symbols as the Starheart. There, Alara shouted, her voice filled with hope. That's the Temple of the Ancients, the gateway to the heart of the lost world. Liam didn't question it. He ran toward the temple, feeling the Guardians closing in behind them. Their growls grew louder, echoing off the ancient stones. They reached the doorway just as the Guardians lunged. Liam spun around, swinging the metal rod with all his strength. It connected with a Guardian's face, sending it crashing into the ground. But two more were right behind it, their red eyes blazing with fury. Alara stepped forward, holding the star heart high. Her eyes glowed as she chanted in her ancient language. A burst of light erupted from the orb, forming a barrier of shimmering energy around the doorway. The guardians howled in anger, slamming against the barrier but unable to pass through. Their bodies flickered, distorted by the energy. They paced outside the barrier, their eyes fixed on the star heart. Alara's knees buckled, her face pale. Liam caught her, supporting her weight. "Are you all right?" She nodded weakly, her breathing labored. "The barrier won't hold for long. We must enter the temple, quickly." Liam didn't hesitate. He helped her inside, the barrier shimmering behind them. The air inside the temple was cool and heavy, filled with the scent of ancient stone and magic. The walls were covered in carvings, depicting the history of Alara's ancestors. Liam ran his fingers over the symbols, recognizing the same ones on the star heart. These symbols, they're everywhere. Alara's eyes widened as she looked at the carvings. It's the legend of the star heart, the story of its creation. She moved closer, her fingers tracing the images. "Long ago, my ancestors were powerful beings, guardians of the cosmos. They crafted the star heart from the essence of the stars, giving it the power to create and to destroy." Liam's eyes narrowed. "Destroy?" Alara nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, the star heart can bend reality itself. It can open portals, manipulate time, even erase worlds." She looked down at the orb in her hands, her expression filled with fear. "That's why the Guardians exist. They protect the star heart from falling into the wrong hands. Because its power is limitless." Liam's face went pale. "And now it's in our hands, with those things outside, waiting to rip us apart." Alara looked at him, her eyes shining with determination. "That's why we must find the heart of the lost world. It's the only place where the star heart's power can be controlled or destroyed." Liam's jaw tightened. "All right, then let's end this." They moved deeper into the temple, the air growing colder. The walls seemed to hum with energy, the carvings glowing softly as they passed. At the end of the corridor, they found a massive chamber. In its center was a pedestal made of crystal, floating above a pool of shimmering liquid light, the heart of the lost world. Alara approached the pedestal, her steps slow and reverent. "This is it, the source of my people's power." But before she could place the star heart on the pedestal, the chamber shook violently. The liquid light bubbled, swirling into a vortex. A shadowy figure rose from the vortex, its eyes burning with red fire. Liam's blood ran cold. What is that?" Alara's face was pale, her voice trembling. "It's the Guardian King, the ancient protector of the heart." The Guardian King's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and hollow. "You dare bring the star heart here? You are not worthy." Alara stood tall, her eyes defiant. "I am Alara, heir to the Lorian Empire, descendant of the ancients. I carry the bloodline of the creators. I seek to control the power, to save my people." The Guardian King's eyes narrowed, his shadowy form towering over them. "Power comes with sacrifice. Are you willing to pay the price?" Alara hesitated, her face filled with uncertainty. But then she looked at Liam, her resolve hardening. "Yes, I will pay any price to protect my world." The Guardian King's form shifted, his shadowy body swirling with darkness. "Then prove your worth in battle." He raised his hand, and shadowy creatures erupted from the vortex, their red eyes blazing with fury. They charged at Liam and Alara, their claws gleaming. Liam tightened his grip on the metal rod, his eyes blazing with determination. "Here we go again." Alara held the star heart high, its light growing brighter. Together, they stood side by side, ready to face the ancient shadows and claim the power of the lost world. Return and betrayal. The air was heavy with tension as Captain Liam Hayes and Princess Alara stood before the heart of the lost world, the shimmering crystal pedestal pulsing with ancient power. Around them, the Guardian King's shadowy form flickered, his fiery red eyes watching their every move. Alara tightened her grip on the Starheart, its glow resonating with the pedestal's light. Her voice was steady, filled with purpose. I seek to control this power, to save my people. The Guardian King's voice echoed, cold and ancient. To wield this power, you must prove yourself worthy. Face the shadows of the past and overcome them. He raised his hands, and the chamber trembled. Shadows poured from the walls, twisting and swirling into monstrous forms. Their red eyes burned with malice, their claws gleaming in the dim light. They moved with terrifying speed, charging at Liam and Alara. Liam's muscles tensed as he gripped his makeshift weapon, a metal rod from their wrecked ship. Here we go again, he muttered, bracing himself. Alara stepped forward, her eyes glowing with the same light as the Starheart. She raised the orb high, chanting in her ancient language. A burst of light erupted, forming a protective barrier around them. The shadows slammed against the barrier, hissing as the light burned them. But the creatures were relentless, circling the barrier, their claws scratching against the shimmering energy. Alara's face paled, sweat dripping down her forehead. I can't hold them off forever. Liam's jaw tightened. Then we fight. He charged forward, swinging the metal rod with all his strength. The rod passed through a shadow, dispersing its form before it reformed, its eyes glowing with fury. They're not solid. How do we fight shadows? He shouted, frustration evident in his voice. Alara's eyes widened with realization. Light. They're creatures of darkness. Only light can destroy them. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she chanted louder. The Starheart's glow intensified, filling the chamber with blinding light. The shadows screeched, their bodies disintegrating into smoke before vanishing completely. Liam shielded his eyes from the brightness, his heart pounding. When the light faded, the shadows were gone, leaving only the Guardian King, his form flickering weakly. The ancient protector's eyes softened, his voice echoing with reverence. You have passed the trial. You are worthy of the Starheart's power. He bowed his head, his shadowy body fading into mist. Alara's shoulders sagged with relief, her knees buckling. Liam rushed to her side, steadying her. Are you all right? She nodded, her breathing heavy. Yes, but the Starheart's power, it's overwhelming. Liam looked at the glowing orb, its light pulsating with raw energy. Then let's finish this. Let's control it, before it controls you. They placed the Starheart on the crystal pedestal, the symbols on its surface glowing as they connected with the ancient carvings on the pedestal. The entire chamber lit up, beams of light shooting out in all directions, illuminating the temple's walls. Images appeared on the walls, visions of Alara's ancestors, their faces noble and serene. Liam watched in awe as the history of her people unfolded before them. He saw the creation of the Starheart, its power used to build civilizations and to destroy them. He saw wars fought over its control, empires rising and falling. Alara's eyes filled with tears as she watched her ancestors' legacy. This is why the Guardians were created, to protect the Starheart, to prevent its power from being abused. Liam's jaw tightened, which means we need to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Alara looked at him, her face resolute. We need to return to my home world, to stop the war and end the corruption. Liam's eyes narrowed. You think your people will accept the truth? After everything that's happened? Alara's shoulders straightened, her voice firm. They have to. It's the only way to save them. The chamber began to shake, the air crackling with energy. The Starheart's light enveloped them, forming a portal. Liam grabbed Alara's hand, his eyes locked on hers. Ready? She nodded, her grip tightening around his. Together, they stepped into the portal, light swirling around them as they were transported back to Alara's home planet. They arrived in the heart of the royal palace, surrounded by golden pillars and towering statues of past rulers. But the palace was different, cold and dark, its halls echoing with whispers of betrayal. Alara's face hardened. Something's wrong. My people should have welcomed me home. Where is everyone? Liam's hand went to his weapon, his senses on high alert. It's too quiet. Suddenly, armored guards stormed into the hall, their weapons aimed at them. Seize them, a harsh voice commanded. Liam's eyes widened as he recognized the figure leading the guards. A tall, imposing man with cold, calculating eyes. Who's that? He whispered to Alara. Alara's face paled, her voice trembling. That's Lord Kale, my father's most trusted advisor, the one who arranged my marriage to the warlord. Lord Kale's lips curled into a cruel smile. Princess Alara, returning from the dead. How inconvenient. He stepped forward, his eyes narrowing on the Starheart in her hands. You brought me exactly what I wanted. Alara's eyes blazed with anger. You betrayed my family. You hired the pirates. You wanted me dead. Cal's laugh echoed through the hall. Dead? No, just out of the way. Your power threatens my rule. But with the Starheart, I will be unstoppable. Liam's grip tightened on his weapon. You're not getting your hands on it. Cal's smile widened. Oh, I already have. He raised his hand, and the guards charged, their weapons blazing. Liam shoved Alara behind him, deflecting the blasts with his metal rod. Run. Find a way out. Alara hesitated, her eyes locked on Cal. I won't run from him. Not again. She raised the Starheart, its light burning brighter than ever. The guards stopped, their eyes wide with fear as the ancient power surged through the hall. Cal's face twisted with rage. You dare defy me. I am the true ruler. Alara's voice was steady, filled with authority. No, you are a traitor, and you will pay for your crimes. The Starheart's light exploded, filling the palace with blinding radiance. Cal screamed, his body thrown back by the force of the ancient power. But as the light faded, Alara's face paled. She stumbled, her knees buckling. Liam caught her, his heart pounding. Alara, are you all right? Her voice was faint, her eyes dull. The Starheart. It's draining me. I can't. Liam's blood ran cold. They had won the battle, but the real fight was just beginning. The trial and escape plan. The grand hall of the royal palace was filled with tension, every corner echoing with murmurs of shock and disbelief. Hundreds of nobles gathered, their faces a mixture of fear, confusion, and anger. The golden pillars and jeweled chandeliers glowed softly, but their beauty was overshadowed by the dark presence standing at the head of the throne room. Lord Kale. Captain Liam Hayes stood in chains, his wrists bound with glowing energy cuffs that pulsed with a faint electric hum. Two guards stood on either side, their weapons trained on him, their faces emotionless behind golden masks. Liam's gaze was steady, his shoulders squared, showing no sign of fear. But his heart raced as he looked across the hall at Princess Alara. She stood beside Kale, her face pale, her eyes locked on Liam with a mixture of worry and regret. Her hands were clasped tightly around the Starheart, its glow dim, reflecting her weakened state. Cal's voice boomed through the hall, his tone cold and commanding. Captain Liam Hayes, you stand accused of treason, kidnapping, and the attempted assassination of the royal heir. He gestured to Alara, his lips curling into a mocking smile. Do you deny these charges? Liam's jaw tightened. I saved her life. I protected her from the pirates you hired. Gasps echoed through the hall, the nobles whispering to each other. Cal's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Ah, lies from a desperate criminal. It was you who attacked her ship, who tried to steal the Starheart for your own gain. Liam's fists clenched, his muscles straining against the energy cuffs. You're the traitor, Cal. You betrayed her family. You betrayed your own people. Cal's eyes flashed with anger. But he quickly composed himself, his smile returning. Such bold words, from a man in chains. He stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. You are nothing, just a human meddler who doesn't understand his place. He turned to the nobles, his voice rising with authority. This outsider sought to corrupt our princess, to poison her mind with lies. But fear not. I have returned her to her rightful place, and I will ensure justice is served. He looked at Alara, his eyes cold and calculating. Speak, my princess. Confirm this man's treachery before your people. Alara's face turned pale, her hands trembling as she looked at Liam. He could see the pain in her eyes, the internal struggle tearing her apart. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Cal's eyes narrowed. Alara, you will speak now. Alara's shoulders tensed, her eyes downcast. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Captain Liam did not kidnap me. Gasps echoed through the hall, the nobles' whispers growing louder. Cal's face darkened. What are you saying? Alara's eyes met Liam's, her gaze filled with sorrow and resolve. He saved me from the pirates who tried to kill me. He protected me when no one else did. He is not my enemy. Cal's face twisted with fury, his voice cold and dangerous. You are confused. The Starheart has clouded your mind. He raised his hand, and Alara cried out, clutching her head in pain. The Starheart's light flickered, dimming further. Liam's eyes blazed with anger. Stop it. You're hurting her. Cal ignored him, his voice filled with mock concern. My poor princess, this is why you must trust me. Only I can protect you from the Starheart's corruption. He turned to the nobles, his voice commanding. You see how she suffers, how this outsider has poisoned her thoughts. He pointed at Liam, his eyes burning with hatred. This human is the cause of her pain. He must pay for his crimes, with his life. The nobles murmured in agreement, their faces cold and unforgiving. Cal's smile widened as he raised his hand. Take him to the execution chamber. At dawn, his head will fall. The guards grabbed Liam, dragging him away. Alara screamed, reaching out for him. No, don't do this. But her voice was drowned out by the guards' shouts and the nobles' applause. Liam's heart pounded as he was pulled through the palace halls, his mind racing. He couldn't die here. Not like this. He had to escape, to save Alara from Cal's control. But how? They threw him into a dark cell, the door slamming shut behind him. Liam struggled against his cuffs, but the energy restraints held firm, burning his wrists. He sank to the floor, his body aching, his hope fading. Then, a voice whispered from the shadows, You're not alone. Liam's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. A figure stepped forward, their face hidden beneath a hood. They reached out, placing a hand on his cuffs. The restraints flickered, then deactivated, falling off with a faint clink. Liam rubbed his wrists, his eyes widening in shock. Who are you? The figure lowered their hood, revealing a young woman with silver hair and glowing blue eyes. Eyes just like Alara's. I am Naira, Alara's cousin, she whispered, her voice urgent. I've been hiding from Cal's spies, waiting for the right moment to act. Liam's mind spun. Why would you help me? Naira's eyes hardened. Because Cal betrayed my family. He killed my father and took power by force. He will destroy Alara and our world if we don't stop him. She handed him a small device. This will disable the palace's security grid. Use it to reach the throne room and save Alara before it's too late. Liam's eyes filled with determination. I won't let him hurt her. I swear it. Naira nodded, her expression fierce. Good. Then let's end this. She opened a secret passage in the wall, revealing a hidden corridor. This will take you to the heart of the palace. But you must hurry. Cal's guards are everywhere. Liam stepped into the passage, his heart pounding. What about you? Naira's face was resolute. I'll create a distraction. Buy you the time you need. Go, and save our princess." Liam hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." He turned and ran, the corridor echoing with his footsteps. His body ached, but his spirit burned with purpose. He wouldn't fail. Not now. The passage led to a staircase, spiraling up toward the throne room. Liam's muscles tensed as he heard voices above, Kel's guards, waiting for him. He gripped the metal rod Naira had given him, his eyes fierce. "All right, Kel. Time to end this." With a deep breath, he charged up the stairs, ready to fight his way to Alara, or die trying. The unexpected wedding. The grand hall of the royal palace trembled with the echoes of battle. Shattered pillars lay scattered across the marble floor, their golden fragments reflecting the flickering flames that danced along the walls. The once magnificent throne room was now a war zone, filled with smoke and chaos. Captain Liam Hayes stood at the center, his chest heaving, his body battered and bruised. His hands gripped a shattered metal rod, its jagged edge gleaming with alien blood. Around him, the bodies of Lord Kel's guards lay motionless, their golden armor cracked and broken. Liam's eyes were locked on Lord Kel, who stood atop the shattered throne, his face twisted with fury. The power of the Starheart crackled around him, dark tendrils of energy swirling in the air. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, his body enveloped in a shimmering aura. Kel's voice boomed through the hall, cold and merciless. "You dare challenge me? A pathetic human who doesn't understand his place. I am the ruler of this world. I am a god." Liam's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing with determination. "You're nothing but a coward who hides behind stolen power." Kel's face twisted with rage. "Stolen? This power was meant for me. I was the one who protected this kingdom while Ilara was gone. I am the rightful ruler." Liam's fists clenched. "You betrayed your own people. You betrayed her. You don't deserve to rule anything." Kel's eyes narrowed, his aura crackling with anger. "I grow tired of your insolence." He raised his hands, dark energy swirling around his fingers. The shadows twisted and writhed, forming massive serpents of black smoke that coiled through the air. They lunged at Liam, their fangs gleaming, their eyes burning with hatred. Liam dodged, rolling across the shattered floor as the serpents crashed into the marble, shattering it into dust. He jumped to his feet, swinging his broken rod at the shadows. But the serpents were fast, twisting out of reach before lunging again. One wrapped around his leg, pulling him to the ground. Another coiled around his chest, crushing the air from his lungs. Liam struggled, his vision blurring as the shadows tightened. He gasped for breath, his strength fading. Kel's laugh echoed through the hall, cold and mocking. "You're weak, just like all humans. You never stood a chance." Liam's eyes flickered, his grip loosening on the rod. His vision darkened, the shadows squeezing the life from him. But then, a voice echoed through his mind, soft, gentle, and filled with hope. "Liam, I believe in you. I always have." His heart skipped a beat. "Alara." His eyes snapped open, blazing with renewed strength. His muscles tensed, his body surging with energy. He tightened his grip on the rod, his knuckles turning white. With a roar, he swung the rod with all his strength. It glowed with a golden light, cutting through the shadows like a blade of pure energy. The serpents howled, their bodies dissolving into smoke before vanishing completely. Kel's eyes widened in shock. Impossible. Liam stood tall, his body surrounded by a golden aura. The rod in his hands was no longer broken. It had transformed into a gleaming spear of light, its blade humming with ancient power. He looked at Kel, his eyes filled with determination. "You underestimated me. And you underestimated the power of hope." Kel's face twisted with fury, his aura crackling with dark energy. "Hope. Hope is for the weak. Power is all that matters." He raised his hands, summoning a massive wave of darkness that surged through the hall, swallowing everything in its path. It roared like a beast, its claws reaching out to tear Liam apart. But Liam didn't move. He stood firm, his golden aura shining brightly. He held the spear before him, its blade cutting through the darkness, splitting the wave in two. The shadows screamed, shattering into dust as the light purified them. Cale stumbled back, his face pale with fear. "No, this can't be. I am a god." Liam's voice was steady, filled with quiet strength. "No, you're just a man." Consumed by his own greed, he stepped forward, the golden light growing brighter. "This ends now." With a powerful leap, Liam charged at Cale, his spear blazing with energy. Cale screamed, his dark aura cracking and breaking apart. He tried to summon more shadows, but they disintegrated before they could form. The spear pierced Cale's chest, its light exploding through his body. His scream echoed through the hall, his form crumbling to dust. The darkness faded, his aura vanishing as his power was destroyed. Liam landed gracefully, his body surrounded by golden light. He stood over the pile of dust that was once Cale, his eyes solemn. "It's over." The star heart floated down, its glow gentle and warm. Liam caught it, its energy pulsing softly in his hands. He turned to see Alara standing at the entrance, her eyes filled with tears. She ran to him, her arms wrapping around him tightly. "You did it. You saved us." Liam smiled, his heart pounding. "We did it. Together." They stood side by side, the star heart shining between them. Its light enveloped them, filling the hall with warmth and hope. The nobles bowed before Alara, their faces filled with reverence. "All hail Queen Alara, ruler of the Lorian Empire." Alara's eyes widened, her voice trembling. "Queen." An elder stepped forward, his face kind. "You are the rightful heir, the only one worthy of the throne." He looked at Liam, his eyes filled with respect. "And this human is the hero who saved our world." Alara's cheeks flushed, her eyes locking with Liam's. "Liam, I don't know how to thank you." Liam smiled, his heart racing. "You already did, just by believing in me." The elder's voice was firm. "It is tradition for the queen to choose a consort, one worthy of ruling by her side." He looked at Alara expectantly. Alara's face turned bright red, her hands trembling. She took a deep breath, her voice steady. "Then I choose Captain Lamb Hayes, the bravest soul I've ever known." Gasps echoed through the hall, but no one dared to protest. The nobles bowed, their faces filled with respect. Alara took Liam's hand, her eyes shining with love. "Will you stay and rule beside me?" Liam's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the star heart, then at Alara. "I'd follow you anywhere." The hall erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the palace. Alara leaned closer, her voice soft. "Then let's rewrite our destiny, together." They stood hand in hand, the star heart glowing between them, a symbol of unity and hope. And so, the heroic rescue led not only to saving a world, but to an unexpected wedding that united two souls across galaxies.